Hey, welcome back to the podcast. For anybody that might be new here, that might be joining us this year, I'm John. This is Tara. We're ADHD coaches, and this is just ADHD. So thanks for joining. So today, with Valentine's Day coming up, it being a new year, we wanted to do an episode about love, all about ADHD and love and
or
autism,
more accurately, love. Limerence.
Not love.
Very distinctively
anti-love.
Not love.
Yeah, so I'm sort of like beating around it, but it's limerence.
Yeah, and this is your first time on this podcast. We like to take research and break it down, make it more digestible for everybody to understand. So we're trying to actively combat all of the misinformation out there about ADHD and autism and just help raise your general awareness about why you do the things that you do. So that's our goal here. We're really focused on helping you learn.
It's so important in this era of misinformation where you have a lot of, at this point, government institutions that are making it hard for people with autism and ADHD. So that's one of our big missions here, is really trying to fight misinformation and just make it relatable.
It's really a perfect storm. It's government institutions. I think in our first ever episode, we talked about there was a study out of Canada that said that 50% of all of the content on social media that you're going to see about ADHD and autism is misleading. So there's a lot out there. It's governments, it's social media. We've also griped about Simon Baron-Cohen before, who is like the lead autism researcher on the planet, and he likes to spread some kind of batshit crazy theories about the cause of autism, and we've broken those down before. So the call is also coming from inside the house. It's a big job, but somebody's got to do it, and so that's why we're here.
Right, and we read the research, and by we I mean Tara reads the research painstakingly. But having said that, we're not doctors, we're not clinicians, so we're mostly sharing this for information purposes, for entertainment purposes, for in our discussions as we talk about what some of the science means, what some of the research means. But we're by no means offering recommendations or guidance. Please seek medical help.
Absolutely. We hope that this will lead to more productive conversations with your doctors. We are not your doctors, so don't do that. Go talk to your doctors.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So for those who don't know what limerence is, Tara.
So limerence is another topic that has a lot of misinformation on it. And so if you've never experienced limerence, that's okay. I think in particular, we're going to be splitting this up into 2 episodes. This first episode is going to be relevant to everybody because we're going to get into the neuroscience causes. We're jumping straight into the brain stuff. Before we're getting too deep into what exactly limerence is. And spoiler alert, the brain stuff is just the theory of addiction, what causes addiction in the brain. So if you have ADHD, you probably have experienced some form of addiction in your life. This is such a huge factor of the ADHD lived experience. So definitely you're going to want to stick around for the neurological understandings of why this happens to your brain and not neurotypicals, because I've found even through this research, this has made my ADHD symptoms make more sense. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with the neuroscience, talk a little bit about limerence, and then our second follow-up episode is going to really get into the nitty-gritty of what limerence is and what limerence is not. This is going to be a good one. If you guys have listened to our rejection-sensitive dysphoria episode, this is going to be very similar because it's going to be really heavy into the brain science. And that's I think that's our second most popular episode ever. So I think a lot of you guys are going to really like this one too. So let's just get into it. What is limerence and what is it not? It is basically an addiction to the fantasies about a person who you're not in a relationship with. So it's always going to be with a person who is either giving you absolutely no signal or limited or mixed signals of interest. Limerence is not possible with someone who is reciprocating by the very nature of it. And what happens is you get caught in this addictive cycle of obsessing over fantasies. You start to distort signals. If they smile at you, you're like, oh, that definitely means they want to be in a relationship with me. If they, hand you a pencil that you dropped, that's the signal that they're in love with you. Like, you start to distort these relatively benign signals. You have these intense, obsessive, all-consuming, involuntary, ruminative thoughts about this person all day long. And you fluctuate from euphoric highs to depressive lows. The euphoric highs are going to happen during fantasies, or again, if they smile at you, if you get those little benign signals that you're interpreting as positive signal that they want to be in a relationship with you. And if they don't text you back, or you get some sort of negative signal, you're going to swing into a depressive low. So it's really a pathology with intense, overwhelming emotions on either end. And it's going to be, at a minimum, for it to be considered limerence, at least like 3 months long. But the average on surveys is that it lasts at least like 4 years on average, with some
Whoa.
people it lasting a decade or longer. And so that's a really big thing. A lot of people with ADHD, I think, misinterpret what limerence is, because they think it's that intense feeling when you first get a crush, but that is distinctly different. That is not
Infatuation, right?
addictive. That's infatuation, right? That's fairly normal. People with ADHD might experience it more intensely than the average person, but it is not addictive. And it's not new relationship energy because the person is reciprocating. You're not getting those mixed signals. The
Mm.
mixed signals are a necessary ingredient in this cocktail in order to start the addictive cycle. So it's very distinct from new relationship, from infatuation. It is its own thing, and it is definitively the throes of addiction. So
This is so when you were telling me about this being similar to addiction, that was surprising to me at first, right? Because you hear about limerence in social media, and like you see it online, and it's like, oh, it's just like it's infatuation, it's a crush, right? It's like you want the person that doesn't want you back, and it's heartbreaking, right? But to hear you talk about it being like addiction, I thought
yes.
was really interesting. And there's a couple of things you were talking about that I was like picking up on and thinking about that makes a lot of sense, I think, with ADHD brains. One is the fantasy piece of it, right? Like, no surprise, I think we are extraordinarily imaginative. We are gamers a lot of times. Like, we can make up worlds, and so the fact that we can uh misconstrue things or misunderstand things, and then to that point about even misunderstanding the mixed signals, when you're talking about people with autism and ADHD who already have a hard time sometimes reading people, communicating, um, picking up on social cues. I I can't tell you how many times I've been in dating situations, or like not dating situations, where it's like, oh, was she? Does that mean she likes me? Like, how do I respond to that? Like, just really awkward
Right.
scenarios that obviously aren't limerence, but like, I have so many of just like awkward, weird, that you try to play them off as like funny and turn it into a moment, but I can see how this can take over, or where it impacts us with ADHD.
Yeah. Yeah. And in our follow-up episode, we're going to really get into the differentials. We're going to break down how it is different and distinct from a bunch of other conditions, including erotomania. That's one that people might think at the beginning, but erotomania is full-on psychotic break. Like, you are having actual delusions. This is where people think that they are in a relationship with a celebrity. That famously happened to David Letterman. He had a fan with erotomania who would break into his house and stuff. So limerence
Oh,
is not full-on delusion. It's maybe in the Gen Z sense a little delulu, but it's not delusional. It's not clinically delusional, but it is a distortion. And so the signals are real. He really did smile at you or something, but you are distorting the significance of that signal. And it's also another thing I wanted to touch on. It is distinct from sex and love addiction. There are support groups for that, because that's, kind of in the name. It's addiction to sex, to relationships. This is not that. This is addiction to fantasies, because you are not with that person, and it's typically centered around the same person across years and years and years and years, and you're not really into them, you're into the fantasy of them,
The
the
idea.
imagination, like the imagined scenarios. And just another sort of quick interesting thing, not to spoil too much in the next episode, but a lot of those fantasies have a very rom-com, idyllic, high school, almost juvenile flavor to them. It tends to be sort of naive fantasies that even people who are in the throes of limerence can probably kind of identify are like, a little high school. It's in the same way that like a high schooler, like you think of Romeo and Juliet, right? Where it's like, I love him, he's the only one for me, and you're like, girl, you met yesterday. Like,
Those teenage emotions, they will run hot.
Yes. So it's very similar to like a teenage style fantasy where it's like, we're going to be in love forever. And there's also often a component of either them rescuing you or you rescuing them. So just very much fantastical, right?
It is interesting too that it can go on for so long. I didn't realize that either. So
Yes.
it's like I wonder if that plays into the addiction side of it. Because I just thinking about addiction, right? It's like you have to have there has to be something to come back to. Like it's sort of keeping you interested enough, right? And so there's got to be like that dopamine hit, right? When you think about things that are addicting, right? If we even think about like social media and like this, like the infinite scroll, like there's a dopamine hit of like what's going to be there. And so my guess, and I'm curious like how much we get into it here, but like if it's somebody
We are
that
going to get into the dopamine hit, which is also a misnomer. It's not actually, it's oversimplified to say that it's a dopamine hit. We're going to get into all of that brain science, which is really exciting. But yeah, it is kind of like that. And that's part of why, by necessity, these are people who are inaccessible to you. It could be your sibling's spouse. It could be a friend. It could be a coworker. It could be, sometimes it is a celebrity, stuff like that. Because if it's someone who kind of is in your inner circle and you're having interactions all the time, and you have clear-cut communication, like one of you is not otherwise unavailable, fantasy dies really quickly. And so that's part of, definitionally, it becomes addictive because of the inconsistent signaling.
wow, yeah. So let's talk about that. So tell me about the incentive salience model. That's where it goes from liking systems to wanting systems in the brain. Do you have neuroscience about this?
Yeah, so this is kind of the foundational model of what causes addiction in general. This is kind of one of the best models that we have for how you become addicted to anything. So this is not just limerence. This is also drugs, alcohol, gambling, whatever it is. It is the incentive salience model is one of the most popular ones. So if you are wanting to look this up online, you're going to want to look up the wanting and liking systems. However, I feel like that terminology is a little hard to follow. I've been sitting and like listening to hours and hours of podcasts on this. And so I'm going to use slightly different terminology that I think is a little bit more specific. But just note that if you want to do further research on your own, you're going to want to Google wanting to liking model, and that's going to give you hits. So I'm going to call it the motivation system and the reward system because that's a little more explicit. So these are two separate processes in the brain. We actually did not know that these were separate processes until the 1980s. And so that's where you get this misnomer of dopamine being a happy chemical. It's not. Dopamine does not cause euphoria or joy or anything like that. Dopamine is actually more for motivation. And when we talk about dopamine as being a happy chemical, it's from that sort of 1980s era neuroscience where they did not realize that these are two separate processes in the brain, the motivation system and the reward system. They thought it was all one. But what they did, a couple researchers gave rats medications that fully block dopamine receptors. They basically shut off their dopamine system, thinking that they wouldn't feel pleasure. And that's not at all what happened. So rats are very similar to humans. They really, really like sweet foods, and they'll kind of lick their lips when you give them something sweet. And if you give them something sour, they'll kind of like pucker. They don't like it, like a baby. Like if you give a baby a lemon and they kind of have that visceral reaction.
So easy to read.
Rats do that too. And so they shut down the dopamine system in the brains of these rats, and then they gave them sweet foods. And they still reacted positively. They still love sweet foods. They gave them, bitter foods. They still reacted negatively. And so this started to show that the reward system is different than the motivation system. What did happen with the rats is they became what's called anhedonic. They had zero motivation to get up and get water and get food, and like they just were lethargic. So that's what dopamine does, is it allows you to have the motivation to basically keep yourself alive.
Wow. So they turned them into lazy rats.
Yes, but the lazy rats still liked sugar.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What lazy rat doesn't like sugar?
Yeah, so you can still feel joy even if you're lazy.
Miserable? Even if you're miserable, you can still feel
Yeah. So,
moments of like enjoying sweets, and there's something. There's got to be something there.
Right. So that's when they started to realize these are separate systems. So let's talk about those two systems. So the liking system is pretty straightforward. So from an evolutionary perspective, the liking system is the reward system. It rewards us for doing things that keep us alive or facilitate reproduction, keeping the human species alive, stuff like that. It gives you, so how when you're thirsty and you take a drink of water and it like physically feels good, that's your reward system. And these are called hedonic hotspots. That's the part of the brain that's controlling this. It's a hedonic hotspot. And so the hedonic hotspots have receptors for endocannabinoids, opioids, GABA. And so when you're getting a reward, it releases the chemicals that latch on to endocannabinoid receptors, opioid receptors, GABA receptors, to give you that little sort of pleasure hit. Or like if you're hungry and you finally eat food and you get that little pleasure hit, that's what's happening. So then you also have what addiction researchers call the wanting system, which I'm calling the motivation system. And this is your dopaminergic pathway. So dopamine is... You have dopamine receptors in several different systems of the brain. This is one of them. And this is the mesolimbic pathway. And it is impaired in ADHD. If you remember in the rejection-sensitive dysphoria episode, we talked about the prefrontal cortex. That's another system that involves dopamine that also is impaired with ADHD. So this is a different system that also has impairment because... damn it, dopamine is important.
Yeah, and so we're already at a deficit here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is why it's like this is why those little studying tricks work so well. It's like when you're studying, have like a Skittle per page you have to read, or like have Mountain Dew, or like Sprite, have a sugary drink while you're, because they actually help you with your motivation to actually stay on track.
Fun fact that we're going to get into later, they help us less than they help neurotypicals. The neurotypicals, they really do have it all. The world is their oyster. Because that part's impaired for us too, but we'll get into that. So we need twice as many Skittles to get the same effect as a neurotypical.
That explains so much.
Yay us. So this is the mesolimbic pathway. The mesolimbic pathway is the motivational system, and it requires dopamine to power it. It is triggered. It can be triggered by cues. So part of it's internal, right? You're going to trigger this if your body is physically hungry. That's going to trigger it. It can also be triggered by external cues. So if you are walking by a bakery and you see a slice of cake, and now you're suddenly very motivated to go get cake, that was an external cue that triggered it, right? You weren't thinking about cake a minute ago, but now that you have seen the cue, now you have that flood of motivation to go get the cake. So this is why when people have addictions to alcohol and stuff, you have to get it out of the house, because when you see the bottle of alcohol, it is going to flood with dopamine to trigger this pathway to get you motivated to go get alcohol or drugs or whatever. So that's part of the importance of eliminating external cues.
Wow. Is this why when I watch the British baking show, it turns me into a baker?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
like, then all of a sudden I have to make everything I'm seeing on the screen?
Yeah. It's a very sensitive system that's impaired if you have ADHD. ADHD, dopamine is such an important chemical. It's really unfortunate for us. So the hedonic hotspots that we were talking about, your reward systems, they're little like modules. Like think of them as little nuggets. The hedonic hotspot nuggets are directly embedded in the limbic system. And so they're interacting with each other, but they are not the same system. So that's what researchers started to figure out in those experiments in the 80s. It's not the same system. It's different chemicals. It's a cascading effect, but not the same thing. So dopamine is often mislabeled as the happy chemical, but dopamine does not get you high. It controls motivation. It controls fine motor control, movement, task initiation. It is helping to encode the exact process for our body to act on the motivation. So if I'm hungry, it's telling me, okay, you need to turn around, put your feet on the floor, stand up, walk over to the refrigerator. Like the dopamine is doing all of the
Wow.
encoding so that you can go receive the food, but then the dopamine is not making you feel good when you receive the food. It's the hedonic hot spots that are targeting the endocannabinoid system, the opioid system, the GABA system, that are actually making you feel good. The dopamine is not making you feel good, if that makes sense.
That's so interesting. I didn't realize that when you break it down like that, it makes you realize how like simplified it is in every other explanation, right? It's like it makes it. I feel like most of the time we're talking about dopamine, or you hear people talk about dopamine, it's like there's a dopamine hit, and then it's like, oh, you vibe, you feel good. It's like you don't want to work out, and then you work out, and then you get the dopamine hit, you feel good. You're scrolling on social media all night, not sleeping because the scrolling makes you feel good, and you feel miserable because you're not sleeping. Or you want the sugar, and the sugar makes you feel good, and it's a dopamine. Or you want to dance all night, so you take a bunch of ecstasy and you dance all through the night till the sun comes up, and then you feel good. But it's none of those things. It's like
Right.
what you're saying is like dopamine actually is responsible for everything getting you to that point.
Right. And
It's
I
like
think,
it's so core to your actual like
yeah.
physical movement.
Well, and I think just as an aside, well, because dopamine deficits are the cause of Parkinson's, right, where you lose motor control. So dopamine
Wow.
is very integral to, and the way that they treat it is they basically Parkinson's drugs are significantly stronger than Adderall. It's like L-Dopa, and so it's literally emulating dopamine, and so they are way stronger to give you the ability to maintain motor control. Interestingly, when I was researching for this, I think I'd have to, don't quote me on this, we'd have to double check. I think they said like 13% of people who take L-Dopa, which they don't prescribe as much anymore for Parkinson's, develop an addiction to the Parkinson's medication, which is why they've been trying to develop alternatives to L-Dopa because it's so strong. But
Right.
the messing with the dopaminergic pathway very much does lead to addiction. So, and these are people who never experienced addiction in their lives. But once they take the Parkinson's meds, they kind of start to develop a addiction to it. So it's, yeah, it's not happiness, right? Because if dopamine did control happiness, then ADHD would just be depression, but it's not.
It's motivation. Yeah.
Right,
It's
it's
100,
motivation.
it's 100% motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's also why a lot of adults don't get diagnosed because ADHD, hyperactive, well, actually, when you're low in dopamine, you get couch locked. You don't have the motivation to get up and take care of yourself, and you're not necessarily depressed. That, I think that's also why a lot of us get misdiagnosed with depression is, oh, you don't have motivation, that must be depression. Well, no, actually, you get caught in that cycle in your head where you're like, I really want to study or I really want to cook for myself.
Hmm.
I'm not so depressed that I don't want food. I really, really, really want food. I just am having trouble. And you can't like articulate why you can't get up off the couch to go cook, but you just like physically feel unable. That's because it's just dopamine.
Yeah.
It's not a lack of joy. It's not a lack of happiness or anything. It's that intermediate step of the motivation chemical.
And it makes a lot of sense because it's so hard to explain to anybody on the outside, right? It's
Yeah.
like why am I have so much trauma of my whole life being called lazy, right? Or just
Right.
like or even on myself, just thinking like there was a lot of days where it's like it's why does it feel so hard to get out of bed? Or why does it feel so hard to get off of the couch? Before I knew I had ADHD, it's like it sucks and it's hard to explain those like those days when things are just really down. But not depressed, right? And
Right.
I've experienced I've experienced depression. Depression is obviously common with ADHD, but like those days where it's just like it's so hard to explain to people who are just like I can't explain to you why I can't move right now, but I can't. But then once you have the diagnosis, once you understand what ADHD is and how it plays, it helps so much to just feel like I'm
Yeah.
that like there's not something broken or wrong with me. I can explain to other people like what's going on here and then be able to ask for resources, then get on medication and, makes things a
Right.
little bit better.
Right. And so this was so John and I started off in coaching training together, and our initial class it was mixed like life coaching and ADHD coaching, which I am pretty fundamentally disagreed with. I actually think ADHD coaching should be a distinct career path because I really don't feel that it overlaps with life coaching in many ways. But when we would talk about the life coaching, they had us read these books about motivation, and we were kind of taught that if your client doesn't want isn't doing a behavior, they might not want it bad enough. And this is part of why I'm like, and I was so annoying in that class. I feel like I kept interjecting and being like, but with ADHD, to the point where I pissed off one of my classmates because she was like, not everything's about ADHD. And I'm like, yes, it is. For us, it is.
For us, yeah.
Yes, it is. We had a final presentation and I did a presentation on ADHD and they ended up asking if they could integrate it into the curriculum. So at that point, I dropped out of that coaching school because I was like, I'm not going to learn anything here if they're using my material. But so for us, it is all about ADHD. We can want it so bad, but we can't do it if the dopamine cannot encode the steps required to acquire the thing. And so that's why I didn't want to call it the wanting system like they call it in addiction models,
Yeah.
even though that is kind of what the scientists call it, because it's not about how bad you want it, it's about the motivation to get it. And so that's where we're lacking. We can sort of desire it, but not have the enough motivation to make it happen when you
Well,
have a
and even
dopamine
like,
deficit.
yeah, and even like know exactly how to get it,
Yeah.
right? But it's just like,
It's like a nonverbal thing. You can't articulate why you don't know how to get it.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're just like stuck. And that's how we get stuck a lot. And that's why, like, and I've even worked with people where it's like, once you get the path, once you get like, there are some techniques to get over that motivation hurdle, right? Like just getting the proximity, is getting close enough to, if it's doing the dishes, getting close enough to the sink, turning the water on, those little things, right? Like taking those steps can help because it's once you start doing something, it's easier to stay with it because you've got the motivation at that point than it is to start it to begin with, right? Or when you're studying, right? It's like, oh, just open up the book or like start start watching some videos or listening to music, something to get you in the in in the space to begin the
Yeah.
activity that you're
You got to grease the
otherwise,
wheels.
yeah,
Yeah.
otherwise avoiding.
Yeah. So that's how the system works normally. Oh, and by the way, the firing rate of neurons in the mesolimbic pathway, so in that motivation pathway, think mesolimbic equals motivation, increase during anticipation of the reward, not from receiving the reward. And this is going to be a really important part later on for addiction.
Interesting.
So you're firing off dopamine when you are anticipating getting the reward, but the dopamine is not actually congruent with eating the cake. It's, oh my God, I'm going to get cake, but not happening because I received the cake. The receiving the cake, that's your other system. Those are the hedonic hotspots. Those start firing when you start eating the cake. So it's two separate systems.
Which is why I love the British baking show so much. Right, I love seeing the cake. Like, this is why the Food Network exists as a network.
Yeah.
Right. This is why like there are so many baking shows, because just seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's dopamine, and then when you receive it, it's not dopamine.
Then it's not. Yeah. Then it's like that gets you to the cake. And then it's the hot spots. That.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So keep that in mind. That is a critical factoid when understanding how addiction works. So we're gonna try two different metaphors here. Okay. So I'm going to start with the shorter metaphor. I think it might be a little bit more confusing, but I really want you guys to understand this. So we're going to do two different ones, and hopefully one of them works out for you. So metaphor number one is an electrical circuit. So with the electrical circuit, and so the dopamine is kind of the power that's going through it. And then you have a bunch of light bulbs on the other end. So for whatever reason, when you take a drug or something like that, you're not adding in extra dopamine. You had very low motivation the first time you took heroin. Like the very, very first time. You're not super, super motivated or craving it or anything, right? But the heroin is way too freaking much. And so it just blows out your circuit breaker. The bulbs are too freaking bright. And so your hedonic hotspots, the reward system is like, holy shit, this is too much. And so
it's sort of like blowing a fuse?
It's like blowing a fuse. It blows a fuse. And so to protect against that crazy surge, your brain starts to downregulate. It's going to dim the lights. It might even take them out of the circuit altogether. It's going to add in a bunch of surge protectors to buffer against it, because it's like, oh my God, this is way too much. However, the motivations, so that's the reward system. It's trying to protect you against the surge. The motivation system doesn't know that it's doing that. The motivation system goes, oh, how cool. It didn't take that much to get a lot of lights. I'm going to do it again. But then it doesn't get as much output the next time. And so then it's going to actually ramp up the power. You're going to start sending more dopamine through the system. And then the reward system goes, oh my God, too much. And it's going to continue to downregulate. It's going to continue to remove bulbs from the circuit. But the motivation system is like, why am I not getting as much out of this? So it keeps sending more and more power. And so that's how you get into an addictive cycle. So that's one metaphor to understand it. I don't like that one as much. So I have another metaphor, but I just want
this is how you go from like, one cigarette every now and then to all of a sudden like a pack a day. It's like, why am I smoking 2 packs a day?
Yeah. Yeah. So to step back and use the other metaphor that I think it's a better metaphor, but I just wanted to start with the quick one too, just in case. Ironically, you can think of this like gambling, even though gambling is also one of the things you get addicted to. So your dopamine system, your motivation system, it's kind of a cheapskate. It wants to get as much reward as possible, spending as little money as possible. And so you're going through your day, you have your slot machine for drinking water, you have your slot machine for eating food, and that's kind of a predictable system, and it's got a max payout. We'll call it 100 happy chemicals. Okay. So you put $1 in, that's a dopamine unit. You put $1 in when you eat and you get 100 happy chemicals out. Great. Maybe you haven't eaten in 12 hours. Well, your brain's going to go, okay, I'm going to double the reward. And so now you put it in the slot, you get 200 happy chemicals out because you really, really needed it. So that's how your brain kind of attenuates like what to motivate you towards. It'll amp up the reward and that's why food, maybe you went on a long hike and you haven't eaten a lot, and, right after that, how food tastes better. Or like you haven't gone to the bathroom in like 10 hours and it feels better, or you're thirsty and then water just tastes better. That's because it's amped up the reward. It's kind of
Because you really
loosened the
needed
slot.
to. Because
Yeah,
you really needed to eat, and you
right.
really had to pee.
So it does these like special power hours where it's like, okay, we'll double the happy chemicals we're gonna give you for the same price, the same low price of one, $1, one dopamine unit.
But it's painful. It's painful to like go that long without eating and peeing.
And that's why your brain is like, we need to get this idiot to put the coins in this slot. Come on. So then when you take drugs again, or behavioral addiction too, right? This is true, both chemical and behavioral addiction. It's crazy. You put in a dollar and you get out 1,000 happy chemicals. And one of the talks that I was listening to, I think they were saying methamphetamine, so meth, is literally like 10x the upper limit of happy chemicals in your brain under like normal circumstances. So normal circumstances would be like a fantastic day. You got your bonus check from work, and you got engaged or whatever. Like it's like 10x the like biological normal max, right? So your motivation system is like, holy crap, I put in $1 and I got out 1,000 happy chemicals. That's crazy.
You
I
didn't
am
have to
gonna
work.
go to this slot machine again.
Yeah, you didn't have to work for it. You just got it.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it uses less dopamine for predictable outcomes. So inconsistent rewards are, behaviorally speaking, a lot more addictive than predictable rewards. So this is another really big component of it. So eating and drinking and stuff is kind of a predictable reward. And so like if your little dopamine motivation system is a gambler and it's got a plan ahead for how much money to bring to the slot machines, it's going to know, oh, that one's an inconsistent reward. I'm going to pack double the coins, right? So it's just found this crazy slot where you can put in $1 and you can get out all the happy chemicals. That's crazy. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go back. But the reward system is like, that was way too big of a payout. I'm going to downregulate it. So it puts it in next time. It only gets out 900 instead of 1,000 happy chemicals. And it goes, what the hell? I know that I am capable of getting 1,000 out. So I'm going to put another one in. And again, the reward system goes, oh my God, we just put out 900. We got to downregulate. And so what's happening in your brain, it is literally desensitizing the endocannabinoid receptors, the GABA receptors, the opioid receptors. And in some cases, it is killing them off. So you physically have fewer receptors and they are less sensitive.
And once your pleasure receptors have been downregulated that much, you get less pleasure from just normal things.
That's right.
Right?
So the next time you go and put a slot in, $1 into the slot for food, you might only get 5 out. And it's like, why would I put it in for food and get 5 out when I can, even though it's only 900 on my heroin slot, that's still better. And so it's going to keep trying to hit that same high that it initially hit. And so it is amping up the amount of dopamine that it's sending through while ramping down the amount of reward chemicals that you're getting out at the same time.
And that's withdrawal, right? That's why with like addiction, it just makes life feel meaningless. Why like withdrawal is such a powerful.
That's exactly right. Life literally feels meaningless because nothing else can give you that same level of pleasure. And you have downregulated to where that's your new norm for happiness. That's your new norm. So one of the talks that I was listening to from a doctor about this, he was saying they've done MRIs on, they've had drug addicts come into hospitals and they haven't drank water in several days. They're like literally so dehydrated. And so they'll do fMRIs where they will give them water and look at what part of the brain lights up, how much it lights up. Again, they are on the verge of death. Like this is not just giving a regular person water. They're so freaking dehydrated because they have forgotten to drink water. And then they ask them, hey, think about whatever drug they take. And they, again, scan it with fMRI. it lights up so much more. And so
Well,
their motivation to take the addictive substance is many factorial stronger than their motivation to stay alive.
and it's just thinking about it, right? It's just thinking. It's like the anticipation of it is what does it. And
And again, like the point we said earlier, the dopamine gets released anticipating the reward, not receiving the reward.
right, right. That now I can see how that connects to limerence and why it's such a strong connection, why it's so related to addiction. Because if you're misreading these signals from somebody, or you're like thinking about it, or there's always that what if it these inconsistent rewards, and the inconsistency is what makes it uh so addictive, right? Then that's why limerence can be so addictive.
Well, and fantasy is a hell of a drug because you can procure it at any time on demand. You don't have to go out of your way to go buy alcohol. Your brain can make it up on the spot. And so it's very hard to pull yourself away from it too. And so that's why, again, the average length of limerence, and there's really a dearth of studies. There's not enough research on this. So who knows if this is going to be accurate 10 years from now. But what we know right
Yeah,
now, the average length is probably around 4 years. And part of this is because of the structural changes that happen in the brain. So when they have gotten rats addicted to things, the structural changes where they are highly sensitized to dopamine. So they also become more sensitized. So the same amount of dopamine has a stronger effect on the reward system. So one coin will go twice as far. It only takes 50 cents now instead of $1. So the structural changes happen. The cravings feel stronger. The hedonic hotspots are weaker. This persists for half of the lifetime of the rats. It doesn't just reverse. And in humans, in the brain scans, they're saying it takes several years for these structural changes to reverse.
wow,
So you go talk to someone who's formerly addicted to drugs. 2 years later, you have them imagine taking that drug or drinking alcohol, and it's still going to light up the same way as it did
totally.
when they were still taking the drugs, because it takes so long to reverse the structural change in the brain.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's why it's so hard to quit addictive substances. It's like it's see it, especially if it's thinking about it or even seeing it, right? With alcohol, when you see the alcohol, like you want it. If limerence is the addiction to the fantasy, and it's the like inconsistency, and you're seeing the person, you have that constant trigger there. Especially if you are like, sometimes they look at you in a favorable way, sometimes they look at you in a not favorable way, and you have to get back in their favor, right? I could see how all that plays together.
Well, and the triggers are not just the person for limerence. The triggers can be a romantic song or a like so jumping ahead a little bit, the way that people have had to kick limerence, part of it is just time. It can be so emotionally exhausting that like you become almost too fatigued to go on after every day of your life for 4 years having these extreme highs and lows. Like at a certain point your body kind of gives up. But another one is to go no contact with the person if they are a person who you interact with. And a lot of people have had to go cold turkey. Like they cannot listen to romantic music, they cannot watch rom-coms, like anything, because it's not just the person that triggers it, it's like the thought of romance or like your own thoughts. Like you can sort of self-trigger with limerence, which is a little different from any other like addictive. So you can't make your own alcohol in your brain.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, that's so fascinating. But but it explains it when you put it that way. And just thinking about like addiction and just a lot of the way you're talking about it. So I used to smoke cigarettes and and drink a lot. So a lot of this, like we are predisposed to addiction. So it's like, none of this is very very surprising. But but it sounded like, so it's like just the whole idea of like anticipating it, and then thinking about like after I quit smoking, and I didn't smoke for cigarettes for a very long time, but like it definitely in my early 20s. and then I quit, but like I quit like 4 times. Like I would quit, and then like time would pass. Like okay, it's like I'm off of cigarettes, and then somebody around me would have one, so I like start smoking again. I did that like for about 4 times before I was finally done with it. But like still, like there are it's God, it's probably been like at this point, it's been a long time. But I still like if I think about a cigarette, like I sometimes still like there are times where like I still like thinking like I want a cigarette right now. It's a weird thing to think about
Right.
because like I don't want a cigarette, but it's like man, but there are times I'm like I just want a cigarette. I don't want to smoke. I don't want to like smell like smoke. I don't want to have to buy cigarette. I don't want to be addicted to. It sucks being addicted to cigarettes, but like
And
I
that's why
can
I didn't want to call it the wanting system, because you don't
yeah
want it, but your brain is motivated to get it.
totally yeah like and there have definitely been times where if I'm in the right crowd or drinking whatever and somebody's got a cigarette like it's hard for me to say no to a cigarette. I'm not going out buying them, and I'm not like necessarily not in smoking crowds anymore.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a long
But
time
you have
since
to
that's
make
even
a
been.
conscious effort, right? Like you
Yeah,
have to like work at it.
right.
So at any rate, we have these medications. We have Suboxone. We have naltrexone is another one. So I actually take naltrexone at very low doses. It's actually super helpful for autoimmune disorders, which a lot of
Mm,
people with ADHD and autism have. It has a slightly different effect on the body. So I take like 4.5 milligrams. When you use naltrexone for drug addiction, I want to say it's like 400 milligrams or something. Again, reminder, we're not doctors. Please, please do not self-medicate based on what we're saying. But so it has a slightly different effect on the body when it's taken at higher doses. But it's overall very, very safe medication. Not that expensive. And what naltrexone does is it blocks the opioid receptors in the brain. And so you can take opiates and, your dopamine system is like, take them, take them, take them. And then, oh, hey, no happy chemicals get released. That's
mm,
weird. And so your brain goes, do it again, do it again, do it again, right? And you take opiates and it goes, oh, hey, I got no happy chemicals. Your brain is a cheapskate. It does not want to waste dopamine on things that are not
interesting.
going to release happy chemicals. And so it learns, actually, opiates don't make me feel good anymore. Who'd have thought? And so it moves on to other things. Um,
Wow.
these medications, methadone is another one kind of in that class. They all work a little bit differently, but more or less the same idea. They are hijacking this system and making it not as direct of a line. They're like 75-80% effective. And we don't just give them out readily. I think one of the talks I was listening to, dang, I wish I was not quoting so many like stats off the top of my head. I should have typed. Some of these I listened to while I was driving, and so I couldn't take notes on the exact stats, but we'll put it in the show notes. I think they said only 10% of patients who have addictions receive these medications. They are 75% effective, 80% effective in most cases. That is higher than insulin. That is higher than antibiotics. That is higher than antidepressants. That's about the same rate as stimulants, because stimulants are incredibly effective, best in class, better than any other psycho medication. Like heads and shoulders apart, depression meds are only 20% effective once you account for placebo. But we just don't really give these out to people with addictions. They have ones for cannabis addictions. They have ones that work for alcohol addictions. Even, I believe they were saying naltrexone can be helpful for
That's wild.
behavioral addictions. Stimulants are helpful for even behavioral addictions.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even have to be like a chemical addiction, right? Like you can take naltrexone and it can potentially help with gambling addiction. But we don't give them out to addicts because we kind of have this perception that they don't deserve it, when really this is a chemical imbalance in the brain, just like any other disorder.
100%. Wow. So I mean, that's unfortunate. And again, we're not doctors, so we're not recommending anything. But if any of this sounds like it would be worth talking to a doctor about,
Please,
by all means.
please. Yeah.
If any of this sounds relatable or familiar, um, yeah, like at this point, reach out to a doctor, talk to a doctor about it. Like there are these things for addiction. Coming back
And
to
hopefully you guys can understand why addiction is so hard to beat now, because it is fighting your body every step of the way, and why relapse is so common. It's not a moral failing, you guys. Like, I'm sure a lot of listeners have gone through this
yeah,
in one form or another, right? Whether it's a chemical addiction or a behavioral addiction of some sort. We talked about in our video game episode, you can have gaming addiction, right?
hmm
Um, this is just a common thing for us, and please do self-advocate if you are trying to get over an addiction of some sort. The societal cost of us not giving these medications out that are relatively benign, they're well tolerated. Like I said, they will give you naltrexone pretty easily if you have an autoimmune disorder. I have absolutely no problem uh, taking that. I can take it into pretty much every country. I can't take my stimulants into every country.
which
It's not a
is
scary drug. It's it's a
which is
very
wild.
yeah.
Wild. It's a whole it's a whole. Well, that'll be a whole other episode of
Yeah,
getting stimulants in
I
other
just get
countries.
I get so worked up over, because
I
it's
know, I
like
know.
it makes drug dealing more profitable when we keep people addicted, when we don't help people. So you are enabling these gangs that are drug dealing, which can absolutely wreak havoc on the local communities. I know that's a kind of growing problem in Europe, like Rotterdam. They're having more and more in Sweden, growing issues with gangs that are dealing drugs, and um, we could make it not profitable if we treated addiction like a disease, because then people could actually kick the habit, right? And keeping people incarcerated, huge societal cost, huge taxpayer burden, huge just burden taking talented, smart people off the streets, right? You you have your whole life ahead of you. When you kick addiction, you could do amazing things, but you can't do amazing things if you're sick. And so it's just a deeply upsetting thing to me to realize that we really do have tools that can help people get over addiction, that we are massively underutilizing.
Yeah. So we've been talking about addiction. We've been talking about some of the way addiction manifests, how it works with our brain chemistry, um, and even some of the drugs that can help with drug addictions. Coming back to limerence, but now I know with addiction as neurodivergent people, we're definitely like more susceptible to addiction. We're more likely to be addicted to everything,
Yeah, anything.
anything, right? Because the dopamine,
Yeah.
right?
That's why, like, I feel like this episode is relevant to everyone, because you might in your head be like, well, I've never been addicted to drugs. I've never been addicted to alcohol or whatever. So this doesn't affect me, but I think even making these notes myself, I've realized I've definitely had behavioral addictions, right? You can be addicted to video games. You can be addicted to fantasies about other humans. You can be addicted to just about anything behaviorally with ADHD.
And I guess even the Great British Baking Show.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Um, so we're more prone to addiction, uh, and that makes us more prone to limerence.
Yeah. So there's kind of two components. So the research is murky about whether or not neurodivergent people are actually more prone to limerence. Based on what people say on the internet, it seems like that is the case. However, I also think people on the internet misuse limerence to mean lust. Like, you'll see people on Reddit saying, like, after one date, if someone's like, I can't stop thinking about him, they're like, that's limerence. No, it's not. It's not limerence at all. That's just regular old lust. And we feel that more intensely too, right? Um uh, we get really excited about new people, and then we kind of get bored of them. That's a typical ADHD cycle. But that's not addiction. That's not true addiction, right? So there are two pieces of the pie on why we are probably more prone to limerence, but again, there is so little research that we can't say for certain. So this is all kind of speculative. But piece number one is, why would we get more happy chemicals in the first place than the average person? And piece number two is, and why would that lead to addiction? So we've kind of been talking about the second component. Why does that create addiction in us? And just to kind of go over some stats, the general population, 5% of them have substance abuse disorder. These are all approximate, kind of depends on the study. We're 3 times as likely to have substance abuse disorders. About 15% of ADHDers have substance abuse disorder. 33 to 44% of younger people with ADHD have alcohol misuse or dependency. So that's a crazy high stat. We are 5 to 10 times more likely than the general population to have full-on alcohol addiction as adults. If you go to an alcohol or substance abuse treatment center, 25% of the humans in that center will have ADHD, even though we make 5% of the population. So we're massively overrepresented in like rehabilitation centers. Between 34 and 46% of adults who seek treatment for cannabis use disorders have ADHD as well. So we are just more prone to it. So part of that is because when we're talking about that sort of slot machine metaphor, we're cash poor. We just don't have as much dopamine. This is different for different people with ADHD. So ADHD is controlled by probably thousands of genes, is what it seems like. And those can impact different parts of the neurotransmitter life cycle. So from life to death of dopamine, you create it, you transport it, it's floating around in your brain, you reuptake it, you recycle it. Some people have deficiencies in creating dopamine. They are literally just not spitting out enough dopamine. Some people have normal levels of dopamine, but they're just like, they're like sucking it up too fast. They're reabsorbing it too fast. Both of those people have ADHD. This is why some people react better to methylphenidate, so the Ritalin family medications. Some people react better to amphetamine, so to Adderall family medications, because Adderall's working more on dopamine creation. And this is all oversimplifying, but methylphenidate or Ritalin is more blocking reuptake, but it's not making you make as much. So that's why different meds for different folks. We have different flavors of ADHD. But either way, the sort of commonality is like there's just not enough dopamine to go around, or it's being misused. So actually some of the ADHD medications will downregulate dopamine in one part of the brain and upregulate it in another. So it's like rerouting the dopamine, because your brain just might be like really inefficient with how it uses dopamine. So that's another sort of factor in what could be causing your specific flavor of ADHD. But so at any rate, we're cash poor. like if you go to your dopamine slot machines, we might have half as much cash in our pockets. And so your brain really wants to use it efficiently. And so if you find a slot machine that's going to have 100 times the payout of another one, you better believe you're going to be putting all your dopamine in that one, because you just don't have enough to go around. So
seeking it out. You're seeking it out everywhere.
Yeah. And so this is where they have found, if you, particularly with children, if they take their medication consistently, if you take stimulants consistently, your risk for addiction normalizes. And so then you're at the same risk as the general population. Because when you're not, cash poor and you have enough dopamine, the body can do a little bit better with that. So things are not going to be as sticky. They're not going to be as addictive, because there's enough dopamine to go around. So
my 20s would have been so drastically different if I'd had an ADHD diagnosis and was on medication.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Meds can be super helpful. It's really a shame the way that they get stigmatized. I think it's all kind of, the sad thing is it's all sort of the same people, and it's like you're getting stigma for ADHD medications, you get stigma for addiction, you get stigma for addiction medications, and not just having the willpower to tough it out, right? Like
stigma for blacking out on the dance floor and waking up in the gutter again.
It's just so much shame piled onto the same people over and over. And then it's like, no wonder, we have worse outcomes, right? Like
and
society
higher
just makes us feel like shit
and
for
higher rates
our
of
brains.
trauma,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
why therapy helps so much, and why even coaching helps a
Yes.
lot.
Yes, absolutely. So that's the one side of the coin, is the low dopamine. The other side, so this is where, throwback to when you were talking about rewarding yourself with Skittles, we also have low hedonic tone. So remember, these were called the hedonic hotspots in your brain that give you the reward center. Our reward centers are weaker. They're just not as sensitive. Um, this is true with depression. This is true with ADHD. And if you have depression and ADHD, have I got news for you? Your hedonic hotspots are extra, extra, extra weak. It's great.
I'm
Uh,
screwed. Is this so? Is this what this makes me think of it? Is this why it's like it's never enough? Enough is never enough.
mhm.
I find myself like always when I find something that's like satisfying or I enjoy something, it's like enough is never like I love ice cream, right? And so like I can never I'll have a little bowl of ice cream and it's like that was great. I would like another bowl of ice cream now. It's like you can't it's like you're never satiated, right?
Yes. So I'll read the quote from the study. It's pretty much exactly what you're saying, but in bigger words. So I think you said it in a more concise way, but they say it can be hypothesized that individuals suffering with genetically lower set point or lower hedonic tone, so think of that as like your baseline happiness, will need to do more to feel neutral or euthymic, which is like contentment. Euthymic is like contentment, resulting in an increased need for stimulation. In part, this may manifest as seeking external stimulation, such as dangerous or risky behaviors and substance abuse, or internal stimulation, like fantasy. That's why I wanted to highlight this quote, because they literally list fantasy as one of the ways to manage hedonic, low hedonic tone. Fantasy is what limerence is. It's a fantasy addiction, a romantic fantasy addiction. And those will raise their hedonic tone. Regardless of the choice to externally or internally raise their hedonic tone, patients with this trait would consistently attempt to cope by finding ways to maximize pleasure and raise mood from their low baseline tone. Furthermore, when stimulation is absent, individuals with low hedonic tone would be hypothesized to experience a shift towards that individual's more usual lower hedonic tone and therefore suffer a drop in their mood to their more common baseline dysphoric state. So if you don't have stimuli, you will fall down to a lower low that other people would consider more of like a depressive level.
Wow.
So we're not, if you have just vanilla ADHD, it's not as low as like the baseline for depression, right? Because like I said earlier, ADHD is not depression. But if you have both, and a good chunk of people have both, then your baseline is low, low. It's like lower than just depression. So it's great. So the ripple effects of this are kind of interesting. So individuals with low hedonic tone may be unable to anticipate expected reward, to ascertain the amount of effort required to attain the anticipated reward. Gosh, what does that sound like? ADHD. And to engage in goal-directed behaviors required to attain a reward. So this is why sometimes we overcommit to things and we're like, oh, I'll just get a PhD, right? And you're like, crap, I didn't realize how much work that's going to be. Or it's like, it's too much effort to cook for myself, right? Or to take out the trash, right? And once you do it, you're like, oh God, that wasn't even that much work. It's
Yeah.
because of our low hedonic tone, our brains are unable to anticipate the sort of dopamine to reward ratio. So they're not able to think about how many coins you have to put in the slot machine to get out the appropriate amount of happiness chemicals. It just has no freaking clue. It's like an unlabeled slot machine.
So the commitment thing is one that resonates with me. It also explains why I'm such a flake, right? Why like I commit to all these I want to do. This sounds so interesting and fun, but like the reality is I'm not gonna leave the house and get dressed and go all the way across town to go to the hang out.
Right. We are both overestimating and underestimating the effort to get the predictable amount of happiness chemicals because our
Yeah.
happiness chemical baseline is so low.
But it also explains why I have so many subscriptions to learning services. Like, why do I have like BBC Maestro and like Masterclass and Skillshare and like
Yeah,
why
I have
why
some
am
of
I
those.
subscribed to all of them?
I have some of those. I only ever end up using YouTube and National Institute of Health
Yeah, right. Like I'm
for
consistently
neither.
it's YouTube, but I and then
Yeah.
I'll start watching a couple minutes of it, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
It gets too boring,
Well, and one of the funny things too is I've always been like, oh, it would be great to there are different ones that are more education focused. And I get by just fine on YouTube. If you guys can't tell, I really enjoy watching like medical conferences on YouTube, which is like a super normal and average and normal behavior, and it's no wonder they didn't figure out that I have autism earlier in life. But it's like the other apps, it would be like extra steps, and YouTube is just right there. The button's like right there, and so it's like it takes less dopamine, less motivation to get the same amount of reward. So that's why I always go to YouTube.
Wow. Yeah. Yep, it's right there.
It's right there. I feel like this episode also just like explains the RSD one, like explains ADHD, but this also like explains ADHD. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and granted, so this paper, I'm pulling quotes. I should note, um, it's complicated. Like they're actually talking about like 6 or 7 different brain systems here. So this model that we talked about in this episode is like a little oversimplified for sure. It's not like just hedonic hotspots. It talks about connectivity between different parts of the prefrontal cortex and stuff like that. So if you're super interested in it, just go click on this paper. But this is enough sort of working understanding, I feel like, for this episode to not just absolutely devolve into some really big, scary words that would be really hard to follow. Anyway, in addition, it has been proposed that those with a low hedonic tone require higher volumes of positive experiences to raise their natural hedonic tone to a more euthymic tone, so neutral, like content, which is often accomplished through substance abuse or risky behaviors. They also said people with low hedonic tone have a reduced capacity to integrate reinforcement over time and to respond to more frequently rewarded cues. This is why it's impossible for us to form habits, because our brains forget that thing did, like you exercised once and you got the happy chemicals, your brain forgot. Even though you feel great afterwards, your brain forgot that will give you happy chemicals. And so it's not going to put the dopamine in the slot machine to make you want to go work out again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
But
it's
it's
also not
also
getting out as much happy chemicals. It's getting you to like a baseline that other people just exist at. So it doesn't really feel
right.
like much.
Right. But it's also why it can be so helpful though. But it also sounds like positive reinforcement plays a role here, right? It's like positive reinforcement. It's like when something's working, you can positively reinforce that. That seems like a something that could be at play here.
Yeah. So I'm kind of gonna like wildly oversimplify this paper, but one of the interesting things was that in depression, the lower hedonic tone was just kind of like universally part of the brain. With ADHD, it was downregulated in certain circuits, but then upregulated in others. So ADHD has more compensatory mechanisms. So it's like, crap, this, little hedonic hotspot, this section is like not putting out any happy chemicals, but we're going to upregulate this guy to try and at least get some. So, that's why like people with ADHD are not like just sad all the time. We actually we can feel super happy from
very intense, right? We have like we
super
feel things
intense
very
happiness.
intently.
Yeah. Because we upregulate in other parts of the brain. And so, but those are more short-term parts of the brain. It's just more of a fleeting thing. And so that's partly why our sort of reactions to things are shorter term, and it's not integrating into habits, because it's just sort of a momentary high that got really super upregulated, more so than the average person, and then it goes away. But it's not the right circuitry to form habituation.
Well, that also sounds like a little bit impulsivity, and it also is like, and our brains seek novelty, right? Like we like new novel experiences because you get that rush. That's also why, like, habits we struggle with, but this is why, like, I like a bag of tricks, right? I like a couple of things that I know that work that I kind of cycle through whenever I need to, like, do something, whenever I need motivation, because the one thing isn't going to work.
Yeah, and you have to keep changing it because you habituate, right? Like if something gives you too high of a high, it's going to start down regulating. So
It's wild. It
you
explains so
like
much.
you need to get just the right amount of happiness to where
Yeah.
it's like enough to motivate you, like enough to get the dopamine to want to put it in the slot machine again, but not so much that it's like, too many happy chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
Next time
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to feel as happy.
Wow.
So it's it's a very narrow line to walk. And that's ADHD. But so that explains addictive behaviors. But let's also talk about why would limerence be addictive? Why would fantasies be addictive, right?
Yeah, this one's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So the first one is, obviously we have a more active imagination. Like our imagination, our imagined scenarios are probably just better than everybody else's. So,
At least there's
um,
that. At least we have that.
so you're going to get a bigger hit out of that, right? And like they mentioned explicitly in that paper, fantasies, internalized experiences are actually the body's natural way of compensating for that low hedonic tone. It's a way to get those little hits completely for free without having to. So our active imagination is adaptive to keep us alive and kicking, because if you have really low hedonic tone and you kind of fall into a depressive state, it's really hard to keep yourself alive. so so it's coping. The ADHDers are nothing if not resilient.
Very true.
But there's also other reasons. So obviously it's a reasonable hypothesis to think that if you have limerence, you are potentially not having your needs met. If you're in a relationship, maybe you're not in a relationship. Um, that I think that's a reasonable hypothesis. There's sort of mixed studies on this, so we don't know for sure, but seems straightforward. And people with ADHD have attachment issues. So, attachment styles are, and this is something that's kind of gotten blown up on like TikTok and it gets misquoted a lot. But and we're gonna do it at a high level, so unfortunately we're probably not really beating the allegations here, but attachment styles are the emotional templates that you form early in life that shape how you connect with others in adulthood, and they develop based on your relationship with your caregivers. So your parents or your grandparents, whoever you were interacting with the most growing up, their dynamic with you is going to dictate your attachment style. And I want to note a couple
Fascinating.
misconceptions about attachment style. It's not necessarily universal. You can have like a secure attachment in general, but if you have a super, super avoidant partner, it might make you more anxious with them, but that doesn't mean that you suddenly
Hmm.
turned into an anxious attachment style person. So it's not like a global thing necessarily, and you're not necessarily like stuck at the same level in the same way your whole life or anything like that. Like it's very overly simplified on when you see people on TikTok. Like they've almost turned it into a personality test where it's like, you are exactly one of these 4 things, no more, no less. And the human brain is just not that simple. But these are, if you look up like John Bowlby, he was one of the early pioneers of attachment style. It's the foundation for like psychodynamic therapy. So it's very important stuff. You could spend years and years and years studying it. Sue Johnson developed a lot of therapeutic techniques based off of this. So um, a 30-second TikTok video is not going to summarize something that PhDs can spend 6 years studying and still not fully grasp, right? So just
Well, I
want
mean,
to
yeah,
caveat
I mean,
all of
that's the
that.
whole, yeah, that's the whole internet, though, right? It's like
Right.
people talking about the extremes of things that people that do not have degrees and stuff, and yeah,
Right.
haven't read all the
And
research.
you know what? We are also not psychologists, so we also encourage you to just go learn about some of this stuff yourself, right? Like we don't want to be hypocritical here. Like we want to be a jumping off point for you guys to go research more as well, because
Yeah, we're not making any
yeah,
any kind of like judgment or assessment or anything. We're just trying to
exactly.
help
We are
raise
about to
awareness.
gloss over it massively ourselves. So I just wanted to caveat before I do that, because I'm sad that we're about to do that. But so secure attachment style is kind of the healthiest one. You had a good relationship with your parents. You feel secure in your relationships. 52.7% of neurotypicals have that, according to this particular study. You know, so that's an estimate, right? 20.8% of ADHDers have it. So like 80% of us have kind of unhealthier attachment styles compared to only half of the general population. Dang it. So actually, we're just about evenly matched with the neurotypicals in terms of avoidant attachment style. So about 35% of neurotypicals have avoidant attachment style. About 39% of ADHDers have it. So,
What is avoidant attachment style?
yeah, so avoidant attachment style is um it's kind of like if your caregiver was absent or inconsistent as a child, you couldn't really rely on them. So this all happens when you're like a baby, right? Babies cannot survive without their parents. If your parent is, for whatever reason, not totally there for you, not a reliable figure, not going
Mm,
to always keep you safe in a way that you can feel confident in, you're going to kind of go in one of two directions. Number one is you're going to be like, oh my God, how do I get attention from this person? What do I do? That's more of an anxious one. Or you're going to be like, I can't depend on anybody except for myself. And you become hyper
mm,
independent, and so you become more avoidant. So
I
as a
see. Wow.
child, people with avoidant attachment style might kind of disregard affection from their caregivers. They're just not as into it. They might show more aggression among other children. As adults, they might kind of have a little bit more antisocial behaviors. They're just not going to be like as expressive. They don't want to rely on a partner in a relationship. They don't like feeling reliant on anyone else. It feels unnatural. And so they're not going to readily give out affection as much. They're not going to need or want affection as much. But deep down, so they've also found you need affection regardless, right? They don't literally not need affection. They just don't
Yeah.
think they do. So that, of course, is going to make you not feel so happy when fundamentally you do need this thing, but you're kind of like in denial about needing it. Avoidant, if you become a parent and you're avoidant, you might sort of disregard your child's attachment needs or be strict and controlling. And you don't tolerate displays of emotions. You try and make your kid be tough. You tell them not to cry. Like when you think about the parents that are like, men don't cry, you know, suck it up, move on, pick yourself up by the bootstraps. That's kind of consistent with avoidant
Got
attachment
it. Yeah.
styles. And that's going to breed kids with avoidant attachment styles, right? The whole theory of like psychodynamics is kind of that these pre-verbal experiences, so pre-verbal meaning when you're like 1 year old, 2 years old, or whatever, and like early childhood experiences are going to dictate a lot of your orientation in adulthood. And so then you're gonna, and again, there's some amazing podcasts on it. We're doing the 50,000-foot view. There are therapists who specialize in this that are going to give a better explanation, but that's kind of the whole theory, is that the way that you had a relationship with your parents sort of dictates future relationships as well, and the way you interact with the world.
Yeah. So avoidant is It's like every American father from like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. So no surprise, we're actually like about the same level of avoidant as the neurotypicals. Uh, so, you know, however, we are a lot more anxious. So weirdly in this test, like in this paper, um, none of the neurotypicals had anxious attachment style and 6% of ADHDers had it. That's obviously not true. There are absolutely neurotypical people, who have anxious attachment. But
It's just the sample. It's
it
just
was
like
just the
whatever.
sample. Yeah. They probably went for like the squeaky clean neurotypicals and not the messy neurotypicals
Sure.
when they were recruiting
I mean, I'm even surprised that 6.3%. Like that feels relatively low.
of ADHDs
Yeah.
because we have the other bad one at very high rates. So we'll talk about anxious real quick. So anxious attachment is where you're like, oh my God, I need affection um from my parent. These are going to be people who become people pleasers. It's like,
Mm,
what do I do to get my parent to pay attention to me? And so you might have an emotionally immature parent and you become parentified at a young age. That's going to lead more to that anxious attachment
right.
style. So you become very responsive and sensitive to other people's needs at your own expense. Yeah, even as children, they become, as children, very distressed when their parents leave, and it's very difficult to soothe when the parents return. So you're just like, oh my God, don't leave me. You have big emotions when you feel like you're being abandoned.
Yeah.
And so when you think of the attachment can be kind of a spectrum. And so at the very, very, very far end of anxious attachment style, you could look at like borderline personality disorder. Someone with
Whoa.
borderline, when their partner when there's a perceived rejection, they feel like they don't exist. They feel like they are non-existent because as a child, when you don't have object permanence and your caregiver is gone, you don't really know that you exist when you're 2 years old. So you kind of regress when you have that very, very extreme manifestation of it.
Yeah. I mean, well, when you're 2 years old, you probably know you exist, but definitely like younger than that,
Yeah.
it would definitely.
It's that pre-verbal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as
Absolutely.
adults, people with anxious attachment style might have more anxiety disorders and be very self-critical and seek validation from their partners and kind of just be always worried about does my partner still like me? Oh my God, are they cheating on me? You know.
Wow.
So, as a
That's
parent, if you are anxious, you're going to over-involve your children in your own feelings and emotional needs. You know,
mm,
you might be leaning on them as an emotional crutch, inappropriately so. They're not your friend; they're your kid, right? Like, but you might be treating them as a bestie. You might struggle with multitasking. You're just kind of anxious and big emotions, big feelings, right? So, the interesting one that a lot of ADHDers have that is not very common in the general population is what's called disorganized attachment style. 6% of the neurotypicals had it in this study. 33% of the ADHDers had it in this study. And unfortunately, this is one of the hardest ones to uh, wrangle.
I mean, it's like without. I mean, just like 33%. It's a lot considering 6.3% neurotypicals have us. But when you say it's disorganized, like the disorganized label feels like it fits.
Yeah, it's classic. Classic ADHD. No, so disorganized attachment style is the mix of both. So you are both avoidant and anxiously attached.
Ooh.
And so that can come, for example, if you have one parent who is like aloof and one parent who is overly emotional. And so when I kind of think of the
People
combination
with
of
ADHD.
well, and I was going to say, if you think of the combination of if you have an autistic parent who might be not as outwardly emotional, not as attuned to your needs, and then you have an ADHD parent who is very emotionally dysregulated, and especially when you think of older generations that might not have gotten a diagnosis and might not have learned healthy coping mechanisms, that's going to breed kids with a disorganized attachment style potentially.
Yeah.
So that might be where that comes from. And so disorganized kids are going to be fearful and express ambivalent behavior towards their parents, approaching followed by distancing. They might kind of lash out or have anger without obvious reasons or freeze in their parents' presence. And it's because the kids are faced with a dilemma. Their caregivers, their only source of safety, are also a source of fear. Because it can be, it
Wow.
doesn't necessarily have to be like abuse. Now, disorganized attachment is certainly a much more likely outcome if you were in a abusive household. But it doesn't necessarily have to be outwardly abusive. It could also just be like, if you have a parent with like really, really big emotions and unpredictable emotions, that can be scary too if you're a child, right? Like that extreme unpredictability and not knowing if you caused it or how to fix it or how to sort of get your parent locked into where they can like take care of you again, like that can be scary as well.
Well, children need like consistency and stability, and whenever those things don't exist,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
and so with the disorganized attachment style, you're gonna avoid emotional intimacy, but also crave it. But you also feel like people are gonna hurt you, and so you're gonna be kind of anxious and be like, do they like me? And then they might show positive signal that they like you, and you're like, oh, get away. And so be sort of clingy and demanding, but then dismissive and rejecting, and you're gonna oscillate between those two extremes.
God, does this feel familiar?
it's, it's the one just for us. No,
It's like you're describing my entire dating life.
so if you become a parent with disorganized attachment style, you might struggle to build emotionally intimate relationships with your children. You might sort of be ambivalent or inconsistent or unpredictable, and that might scare your kids or confuse them. They don't really know what to expect out of you because one day you're super affectionate and the next day you don't seem to care. And so you're hot and cold, right?
Or you oscillate between like being super fun to be around and then just like completely violently snap
Yeah.
while you're on an
Yeah.
alcoholic bender.
Yeah. So, of course, if you have any of these attachment styles, you can you can reduce the impact that they have on your life, like with awareness and working on yourself. You can have like a disorganized attachment style, but only a little bit, right? Like it's not like this is like a death sentence where you're never going to find a partner and you're never going to have a meaningful relationship or anything like that. Like these are predispositions, but particularly through if you have attachment therapy, like psychodynamic therapy. This is the whole point of psychodynamic therapy, is to allow you sort of form an attachment with your therapist. And then through working with your therapist, you form a healthy, secure connection, which helps to retrain the brain to understand what a secure attachment looks like. And so some forms of therapy are like not very good for ADHD and autism. In particular, there are some books out there about why like cognitive behavioral therapy does not work for autism. I kind of think, and there's not enough research. There's never enough research. I kind of think psychodynamics is one that probably works for everyone and actually is a form of therapy that's probably like extra important if you're neurodivergent, and I think is not going to clash as much with your neurodivergence. So, but interestingly enough, so a lot of psychodynamic therapists think that attachment style is formed through childhood experiences. This study actually challenges that a little bit. So stimulant medication increased the number of ADHD children categorized as securely attached. So along with all the other benefits, it can actually improve your attachment style, which is like crazy. So stimulants took securely attached children with ADHD from 7% to 30%.
Wow.
And it completely eliminated disorganized attachment.
Whoa. Okay. So there's help. There's help. You're not screwed. If your parents kind of, maybe weren't around so much, like there's that, like medication can really make a difference here.
Yeah. And, I don't know what effect it's going to have on adults. So couple limitations of this study that I should point out. Number one, it was on kids. If you're a listener, you're probably not a kid. So, I don't know what it'll do to adults. Stimulants certainly have other benefits. So,
But you might be an adult that has kids. And this is where, like, so if any of this sounds like, if you're thinking about, I've got kids, so I'm thinking my parenting style reflecting on a lot of this, right? This is why, like, the positive reinforcement can go a long way with children with ADHD.
Totally. And just consistency.
Consistency, yeah, right.
Just whatever you do, don't give them the disorganized attachment style.
Yeah, the consistency is tough though when you have ADHD, right? I think about this a lot because, like,
I think that's why we have more disorganized attachment, right?
Right, like,
because our parents have ADHD.
Yeah, and I'm aware of this stuff. I'm thinking about how I'm parenting, and, like, there are definitely I reflect this a lot because there are times where I'm, like, really engaged with my kids, and I'm just, like, playing, like immersed in their, because, like, again, we're good at fantasy, so it's all world building. I'm super immersed in their games and world building, but then there's times where it's just like I don't have energy, and so, like, my kids have to see me oscillate between, like, super engaged in their, like, fantastic world building, and then, like, sorry, I'm on the couch, I can't do anything. But again, back to the motivation. And I mean, I'm aware of that, and that sucks. How do you explain to a 5-year-old? I know you were just making an entire imaginative world with princesses and dragons and all that, and K-pop demon hunters, and I was a demon, and we were chasing through the subway, and now I just have to sit down. It's hard. It's being the parent is tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's the tricky part with psychodynamics is you don't want to fall into a trap necessarily of, like, blaming all your parents for all your problems for the rest of your life. And some of the historical roots were a little bit, like, mom shamey as well, which modern psychodynamics is not like that. But the 70s were not as good of a time to women in particular. But so it is tough, but it's hard, and I think another one of the limitations of this study is they were like, we don't actually know, maybe medication does not fix your attachment style, but it's hard, but it was just identifying ADHD in the first place.
Interesting.
So one of the weird things with ADHD is it's not really taught in psychology, not at any meaningful depth, and typically it's taught as a childhood pathology, and they don't teach that it can happen to adults and stuff. Like unfortunately, psychologists really aren't learning about it. ADHD and autism are relegated to neuropsych, which is a different branch. It's a different specialty. That's where you go if you want to learn about dementia or car crashes with traumatic brain injuries or stuff like that. So we're kind of lumped in to that category because you're born with it. It's not acquired, if you will. But the unfortunate part is that then I think these two fields compete. And so, it's not like they created attachment style tests with ADHD in mind. And so attachment style tests might just be picking up on your ADHD a little bit to begin with. And so they were like, maybe we've not discovered that we have cured, disorganized attachment style with stimulants. Maybe we have found that ADHD looks an awful lot like disorganized attachment. And then when you take your stimulants, it actually reveals that you had a more stable, securely attached attachment style underneath the hood. Yeah. So that's one of the limitations of this study. They point that out. Who knows?
Yeah.
However, and part of what goes along with this is that ADHD relationships also tend to be more unstable. So you might be having attachment issues because your parents had a bad relationship in the first place. So our divorce rates are twice as high as the general population. So, but again, they do note even on these websites, stimulants and proper treatment and coaching and stuff like that can help to even out that higher risk of divorce rate. It seems like that double divorce rate tends to correspond more with undiagnosed or untreated ADHD, and this is a really good realm for coaching, I would say. So the stimulants obviously help the chemical deficit. There's this chemical deficit there, but pills don't give skills, and so learning how
So
to
true.
learning how to
Yeah.
interact with your partner in a healthy way and coming up with strategies, particularly if like one partner has ADHD and the other one does not, coming up with compassionate strategies. That is a great area to cover either with a relationship therapist or like with a coach who specializes in ADHD. I would say no matter what, though, if you're going to go that route, find someone who specializes and understands ADHD. You
Yeah.
can make it so much worse if you go into like a couples therapist that doesn't get it, and then they're trying to fix behaviors that are just part of your ADHD and kind of blaming you for it and stuff. Like that's a very real possibility. So whether you go the coaching route, the therapy route, both is great if you can afford it. Get specialists who understand ADHD. Ideally, they have it themselves, because there are just certain things. As much as you want to research ADHD, I do think that lived experience is hard to
Totally.
replace.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Um,
mean, this is a big one. This is like why I wanted to get into coaching myself, because like once I got on medication, it made a huge difference. But like it's what they weren't, to your point, pills aren't skills. So it's like it helped. It was one part of the equation, but there was still this whole other side of things where it's like, oh, now I know what this stuff is. Now I know about like ADHD, and like I can't get off the couch sometimes, and I can't perceive time, and all the motivation stuff. I know about that. The medication's only one piece of it, and the coaching helps with the other side of things.
yeah. Yeah. Once you have enough dopamine to have the motivation to do things, now you
Yeah,
got to learn how to do those things.
right.
So, and so just to wrap it up, the other kind of reasons why people with ADHD and potentially autism have more predisposition to limerence is that limerence corresponds very strongly with low self-worth. So we'll be talking about it in the next follow-up episode, but one of the things that really sets limerence apart from other behaviors, like stalking rates, for example, don't seem to be really higher in limerent people
Hmm.
because limerence is very strongly associated with shame and guilt, whereas
Oh,
stalking is generally with the intent to intimidate and assert power over the target. And
super
limerent
fascinating.
people aren't trying to intimidate the target in most cases. Um, they are kind of addicted to the fantasy, but they usually don't even want people to know that they are having limerence in the first place. Like it's usually this like sort of shameful, dirty little secret. So limerence is just generally not about exerting control or entitlement. In many cases, people think that they are not worthy of what's called the limerent object, the person that they're fantasizing about. They call that limerent object. They think that they are not worthy of the person they're fantasizing about. And so that's where you see a lot of these fantasies that revolve around like they rescue me or I rescue them, like kind of that sort of
Mm,
juvenile high school fantasy again, because then you would deserve them, right? Or you'd feel deserving, right? If there was some sort of like rescue scenario or some sort of rom-com scenario. So so that sort of low self-esteem, that guilt, is obviously very classical with ADHD and autism. And so that might sort of predispose us in the first place to not experience relationships up front, but to sort of, limerence is safe because you can't get rejected. You're experiencing the highs and lows of a relationship from afar, like you're on the outside looking in. And so that's almost a safer way to do it without getting outright rejected. So and the social isolation is another factor, a lot more common for neurodivergent people, right? So your needs are probably not being met if you are socially isolated or if you don't really know how to ask for them with your partner, or your partner doesn't understand you, you don't feel good enough for your partner. So because you can have many people have limerence even though they're partnered, and it's not that they're going out with the intent of cheating. Again, this is a completely involuntary addiction, they're not like trying to cheat on their partner. But if their needs aren't being met, it could kind of predispose them to this fantasy world that becomes more addictive. And then if you are more isolated, and you kind of talk to your friends about it or something like that, you're going to be getting fewer reality checks where your friend sits you down and is like, honey, he's not into you, right? And so the isolation prevents the reinforcement that like this is a fantasy that is maybe distorting some signals here, right? Like we're getting our wires crossed, and he gave you his pencil. That does not mean that he's in love with you.
Right. Yeah. So if you want to know more about what limerence feels like, or what makes it different from infatuation, or how we discovered limerence, you're gonna have to come back, because we're gonna dive a lot deeper into limerence in our deeper dive limerence episode. We're gonna try to push it out right around Valentine's Day, because I feel like it's
just in time. I think most of our listeners are in countries that celebrate Valentine's Day. I think some countries celebrate it in like June, but
really
I think a good chunk of people are in countries that have it in February. So
yeah,
we're trying to make it topical.
And if you've listened this far, please give us a like and subscribe. It goes a long way for a small town like us. God, I think we're a little over the 1 year mark now, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Consistently.
Yeah.
So like like and subscribe really helps the channel grow. So thanks for
and
thanks
comment.
For
let us know what you want to hear. If you have any questions, we love getting your comments and responding to those.
Yeah, and let us know if you've experienced limerence, or if you know somebody that has, and maybe you don't want to talk about it, or maybe you do.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Cool.
All right. Till next
Thanks.
time. Thank you.